It's not really
It's
live.
about
Yeah.
7 or 8 seconds delay.
Okay.
We're unmuted.
We'll step
Not
out.
including any other delays because of actual connection and stuff.
That's right. That's right. So it looks like. Okay.
Muted.
Sound is good. You'll want to mute.
So,
Once you want to mute on the computer itself, the app itself.
It's gonna be-
Well done.
That's okay.
The psychology of pain. Yeah. That's why chronic pain is phantom pain.
Oh, yeah. I'll have it.
We'll call this meeting to order. This is the full board meeting of the Mississippi State Board of Medical Licensure for January 19th, 2023. Dr. Givens is going to lead us in our invocation. Please stand.
Good morning. Most gracious and Heavenly Father, we thank you for the gift of another day of life. We pray that the deliberations today will be pleasing in your sight, that we'll be attentive, attend to the rules, look at everything in your eyes with justice and fairness. We pray for safe travel home, and we pray that everything we do is pleasing in your sight. Amen.
Dr. Kennard will lead us in the pledge.
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Moving on to announcements. I'd like to recognize our special guests of our meeting. I'd like to thank our court reporter, Ms. Kelly Showles, and also our Assistant Attorney General, Sarah Mann. Thank you all for your service today. Moving on to our yes, I'm sorry. I believe Dr. Michelle Owens has some public comments to make.
Good morning, everyone. It's not really public comment, but just, I wanted to take this opportunity to acknowledge a loss amongst the medical community, a person who was somewhat of a giant within the state of Mississippi, specifically within our small OBGYN community here. Dr. Frida Bush passed away on Sunday. I'm sure many of you may have already known that. And those of you who are familiar with this board would know that she was also one of us who represented us well, not only in her service as a physician and a champion for women's health, but also as a member of the board. She served in, I think, 2010 to 2011 as the chair of the Federation of State Medical Boards. And she's actually only one of two individuals from Mississippi to ever hold that position. And the person who did it before, I think, was in like 1947. And so she dedicated her life. Those of you who know her know she was a person of compassion, kindness, and conviction. And she will be greatly missed. So I just wanted to at least acknowledge that, not only for her contributions and what she did for women and girls across Mississippi, but also what she did for this body and how she represented us well on the national level.
Thank you, Dr. Owens. As a medical student, Dr. Bush, she just had an unbelievable reputation and was just always so sweet and kind to every person that she came across.
Yeah, I think she had a compassion for everyone. She'd been a nurse midwife before becoming an OBGYN and came back to Mississippi to practice. She was a person who was a friend and a mentor to me. And so this one, it hits home a little bit differently, but I think that her loss will be palpable throughout the state.
Thank you for that. Moving on to item number 4, our executive director report. Ken?
Thank you, Mr. President. y'all just make it so we can see the slides from here. In licensure, for the months of November and December, we issued 79 new MDDO licenses, no new podiatrist licenses, and 6 new PAs. Through the compact, we issued 128 additional licenses, and as a contrast to the 79 we issued correctly. And we also issued 14 letters of qualifications for other license, for our state licensees, again, with your license. As far as certifications to other states, we issued 448. And as far as cannabis registration, there are now 107 licensees that are registered with the Mississippi Department of Health. And out of those, 99 have registered with us. And there's always just a little bit of a lapse there between when they get their health department registration number and when they can register with us. So this is very normal, what we're seeing. In investigations, that should say November, December, I didn't change it, but we received 66 complaints. We closed 5 cases and we opened 15 new cases. It gives us a total of 85 open investigations that we're currently doing. Within 7 days, we were able to close 91% of our investigations. We requested 36 reports from the PMP. Of those, 25 required us to take further action. And at this point, I wish I'd made that a little bit bigger, but this is a reminder to all the board members that the 111th annual FSMB meeting will be in May, 4th through 6th. And Francis has asked me to get a head count of how many people we think will be attending. So 1, 2, 3, 4. You got it, Francis? 5, 6, 7. Okay. All right, Francis, that good? All right. All right. Any questions?
Thank you, Ken. Moving on to number 5, we can review tab 5 with the minutes of the executive committee meeting from November 16th.
He's asking you to speak.
She wants you
up.
to talk.
Make sure your thing's on.
Can you hear me okay? Any needed edits or corrections to the minutes? I'll entertain a motion for approval.
So moved, Owens.
Second.
Is there a second? Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to item number 6, the minutes of the full board meeting from November 17th. Any corrections needed? Entertain a motion for approval. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to the minutes of a specially called board meeting from December 8th in tab 7. Review. It was a long day. All right, entertain a motion for approval. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Right.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to reports from committees. Scope of practice, Dr. Kennard, any report from scope of practice?
No report, but maybe one impending between now and the next board meeting.
Dr. Lippincott, any report from professionals health program?
No report.
Dr. Gibbons, any report from the telemedicine interstate
No,
licensure
sir. No
combat?
report this time.
Dr. Owens, any report from the licensees education and communication?
No, no issues, no report.
Dr. Owens, any report from the physician assistant advisory task force?
We did not have any issues come up for the task force, and so there's no report there either.
Joyner is not with us today. I think Dr. Owens is also representing Dr. Joyner in this capacity in the report from the rules.
No, rules and regs
Regulation.
have not had a meeting, and so we are current at this point. No report.
Okay, moving on to item number 9. Former president of this board, Dr. Virginia Crawford.
Good
Good
morning.
morning.
Thank you for, I have to stand up.
It would help.
We'll hear you
That's what
better.
happened.
All right. I've never been on this side. Thank you for having me today. The issue that has brought me here is I have learned that compounded semaglutide, and I don't know how many of you are familiar with semaglutide, but it is a medication that it is has been developed for diabetes and now FDA approved for weight loss. But there are issues with prescribing the compounded version for weight loss alone due to some wording in the updated bariatric medicine guidelines that someone in this room may have been partly responsible for. So I'm here to correct an unintended consequence of the rules that we wrote. And I would like to say in the defense of the board that was at that time, there were no medications like semaglutide available. The drug Contrave and the drug Eustemia were brand new to the market at the time that we wrote these rules and regulations. So there's been a big improvement in the pharmacology for obesity management. What we were trying to do was to prevent people from getting HCG, thyroid hormone, diuretics, B12 for weight loss alone. But inadvertently, we made it where a new medication like the GLP-1 receptor agonist could not be made available through compound. Why is this drug being compounded? There is a shortage of semaglutide, both in the form of Ozempic, which is for diabetes, and the form of Wegovy, which is for weight. And so it is on an FDA waiver, and through that FDA waiver, compounders, it is acceptable for a compounder to make a product. So the issue is in Rule 1.5F, it states that off-label use of any medication that does not have Food and Drug Administration approval for use in the treatment of weight loss is prohibitive if administered solely for the purpose of weight loss. So solely for the purpose of weight loss becomes the issue here. This may be a short-term problem, but I do think it's important for us to look at and offer things that are effective, safe, and very beneficial for patients that struggle with obesity. And that's really why I'm here, is to advocate for our obese patients. So I'm asking you to consider a proposed emergency rule to 1.5F that would allow until July the 1st, 2023 for this rule not to apply to semaglutide-based legend drugs, to allow the board to study the need for this rule. So that's my ask. I do want to say that just one last word about advocacy for obese patients. I practice obesity medicine because I was on this board and I was asked to write these rules and regulations. I knew nothing about treating obesity at the time. Subsequently became board certified in obesity medicine and am very interested in the pathophysiology of obesity and its comorbidities, as well as the difficulty in hunger regulation for people. If it were easy to be skinny, we all would be. It is not easy, and people really need help. My patient population, the average BMI is 42, and the average age is 47. And some of those people have had weight loss surgery and still have BMIs that high. So I ask you to consider this really to help patients have access to this drug until it is readily available from the brand name product. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Crawford. Could you, for the board members who don't use this medication, could you briefly just explain to them the physiology and the benefits
Yes.
that we've seen?
Semaglutide is a glucagon-like receptor 1 agonist, and it works locally in the gut. It does delay gastric emptying, but it really works and it increases insulin sensitivity, which is how it's effective in diabetes and probably PCOS as well. But it acts as a neurotransmitter and affects the feeding center in the hypothalamus. What it does is people get full really quickly. Those people that have a real hard time feeling satisfied after eating get early satiety, and they also have a decrease in cravings. So people eat about a third to a half as much as they did previously and don't really crave things as they did before. I have a lot of patients tell me, particularly people that eat and then they're already thinking about what they're going to eat next, that they stop thinking about that. So it does have a direct impact on eating control. So that's how the drug works. Side effects are mostly gastrointestinal. It is a safe medication. It's been around for diabetes for 7 or 8 years, I think. The two real contraindications to using the drug are personal or family history of medullary thyroid cancer or pancreatitis. Those are the two big reasons you can't use it. But about 70% of the people that take it get benefit from it. It does not work for everybody. TikTok would like for you to believe that it works for everybody, but it doesn't. It works for about 70% of the patients that I prescribe it for. And a number of those stop it because they can't tolerate GI side effects primarily.
Can you speak to the cardiac benefits?
Yes, the studies for cardiac benefits have been done in type 2 diabetes, and it is showing real positive benefit in prevention of cardiovascular disease. It's also being looked at in fatty liver. It's being looked at in osteoarthritis of the knee, and I think you're going to see 4 or 5 drugs all in this class coming in the near future. Mounjaro, which is FDA approved for diabetes right now, which is tirzepatide, is being fast tracked through the FDA for obesity as well. So that may be the next issue.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Is the FDA going to approve it for the treatment of weight loss?
It is, semaglutide is currently FDA approved for the treatment of weight loss as the drug Wegovy.
But I don't understand
The point,
what's the problem with the compounding?
it is considered an off-label use. Anything that is compounded is considered off-label use.
So additional, anything that's compounded by the nature of compounding is not an FDA approved drug. Okay. To be FDA approved, it has to be assigned an NDC number. It has to go through trials. That's how you get FDA approval.
But the Ozempic is approved
It
for
is,
weight loss.
and Wegovy,
No.
Olympic is not.
Not for weight
Wegovy, the semaglutide Wegovy is approved for weight loss. Ozempic is not. Mounjaro is
It's
not
not.
yet, and any compounded form of it is not. So what this rule change to do, and Paul and I worked with Dr. Crawford on coming up with what we felt like was good language to allow doctors in Mississippi to use this medication to treat obesity, and just for a 6-month window while the board has a chance to review this policy or this rule, this regulation, and see if there are other changes that we may need to make.
and to work with the pharmacy board because compounding is a totally different animal. I learned in a very short period of time, I don't know very much about the rules and regulations that govern compounding pharmacies. And so not getting crossways with the compounding pharmacies, I think is an important factor in this issue too.
Compounding pharmacies can only compound a medication if it's not commercially available and is on the FDA list for shortages,
Which semaglutide is at this point in time.
which currently it is.
If they may be off tomorrow, but today it is.
So is one of your options just to change the word is to may be prohibited so that it gives us that flexibility in the future?
I handed this out to you earlier.
Yeah.
I mean, we went through several different language
Okay.
changes to try to get to what we thought would achieve this without having too many unintended consequences.
Yeah.
And this is where we ended up. So,
Because it seems like it doesn't end with this semaglutide. It's going to be a trend and there's going to be knockoffs in different forms. So,
Probably so, which is my best guess would be that.
so you don't want to have to name every drug every time. You could just change. Does not have Food and Drug Administration approval for the use and treatment of weight loss is prohibited to maybe, and then you have the flexibility, but
Well, I think that could open the door.
yeah, definitely.
That I think is where the issue lies,
Yeah.
because I left out the word solely initially, and that could have opened the door too.
Mhm. Yeah, that's tricky. It's tricky.
Rowan?
The original is in the binder. So this is the proposal. So
Oh,
this one would be the one that hopefully would need very little additional tweaking, but if we were gonna tweak, it would come from here. But you do have the ability in tab 9 to see the original language to be
Right,
able to
that's helpful.
determine the difference, so you can compare one
Yeah.
versus the other and see where we came from and where we were from.
gotcha. Yeah.
So also just to be clear, Ozempic and Wegovy are the exact same medicine. The FDA just had to rename it for the obesity indication.
The dosages are a little bit different in the higher doses, but that's the only difference.
But the red part is the proposed
the
change.
proposed change, yes.
Can I tell you what one of my concerns is? And I'm happy to see you, because I used to call you all the time. Uh, I've used drugs that are FDA approved for different indications since I've been a physician. And it's really helped because there's always a lag that's going on. So what I'm worried about is because we have a shortage, we're gonna cut off doctors' access to this drug. So for example, now, this may be one of the best drugs for NASH.
Yes.
So, and we can't keep adding them and taking them away. So because there's a supply problem, I don't think this board should get involved.
The reason Dr. Crawford's here today is because people are using these semaglutides solely for the purpose of weight loss, which our regulations prevent. Okay. She believes, I believe, that our licensees should be able to use it. However, when you start trying to tweak Rule 1.5F, you create windows of opportunity that could cause unintended consequences. That's why with the recommended language that we have given you here, it creates a 6-month period, gives this board time to study the rule more intently and see what changes we can make and what language we can come up with so that we avoid unintended consequences.
Like we did.
Yeah.
And so basically, every primary care doctor is trying to use this medicine to help people. And,
That's right.
and they're working technically outside of the FDA and the rule. They're violating the rules with this great new medicine, the way it's currently written. And so we're basically just trying to give a temporary legal pass until it's a changing, quickly changing environment of what's available and what the FDA is doing with it. And this basically just takes some administrative heat.
Are they
off
really
these
breaking
doctors.
the FDA rules? That's what I'm saying.
They're not
Not
breaking
the
the FDA
FDA,
rules. They're breaking
ours.
ours.
Okay,
So
so
we're
Yeah.
changing the rule for that purpose.
Would you say every primary? Someone who has a comorbid condition. That's all. That's all that stuff. I mean, this is going on now. I
Yeah.
promise
Yeah, it is.
Oh, I promise you it's going.
you.
Yeah. There's one thing for
The
sure, it's going on.
treatment model for obesity with these drugs is going to change from what we have considered it to be in the past to one of treating a chronic disease. The model's going to change because you can follow people differently if they're on this medicine as compared to phentermine or something like that. I still need the lifestyle change, the psychosocial support, education, all those things. If you administer medicine in a vacuum, they will lose weight, but they will gain it back. So you have to really stay focused on the weight reduced state and really help them through that.
So is this, how much of this problem is due to the supply chain issue?
A large part of it.
So is the need for the rule change going to go away when the supply
may.
chain problem goes away?
It may, but it may come back with another drug, which is kind of what I anticipate.
Thank you.
I don't know that, but that's kind of what I anticipate.
Dr. Owens?
So I know that we kind of have to be real careful about using the term wonder drugs, but when you think about what has typically been on the market with respect to treatment for obesity, this drug is leaps and bounds ahead of any of those other drugs. Minimal side effects and much higher rates of weight loss.
10
that
to
we see.
30%, a little bit higher with Mounjaro based on the studies. Now, it is not FDA approved for weight, but the studies that have been done on Mounjaro give a little bit higher weight loss than the semaglutide. But it's not medically significant weight loss.
And those
in the majority of
biochemical
the patients.
the biochemical profiles of these people change dramatically, which puts them on a better road to long-term
Metabolic
health.
health.
Absolutely. So when you think about how much obesity contributes, yes, we are the fattest state in the union. We typically are at the top of the list. This is something that really can make a huge difference in the lives of our patients. It's not just about people's obsession to be smaller or thinner.
No,
but
that
something
happens.
that can actually make people, be healthier
Right.
within the state, and giving doctors finally something that they can use that will really help significantly for their patients.
Yeah, with a much safer risk profile.
Then you have a 6-year great study in diabetics already for the safety part
Right.
to fall back on. It's not like it's
Right.
it's not a new drug.
That's
It's a
right.
new
Not
indication.
drugs, new indication.
The 6 months enough. I mean, you have to come back. You can just change the date and extend it, or why not just make it the whole year of 23? I mean, I don't know. With that track record.
I think that that's completely up to the board.
Yeah.
what that's gonna like.
Paul?
Yes, sir. I just want to speak to the question about the legality, which the FDA can change its position at any time. But because they put these drugs on the either unavailable or limited availability list, and that has fluctuated a lot over the last 6 months, they're basically taking a hands-off position with regards to the compounded pharmacies. That's not an issue for this board, but that's between the FDA and the compounded pharmacies and the manufacturer. But he does appear on the unavailable list, and it's just a simple fact that you got to go that you can't use off-label use for the same drug, whether you're treating diabetes or weight loss. If you were using it to treat diabetes, you could make off-label use for weight loss. That didn't make sense to us. But the FDA has taken a hands-off position to this board with regards to compounded pharmacies.
And this would, I mean, we're all the primary care docs are actively doing this, but it would take concern about potential board intervention. While we're trying to help people appropriately. I mean, we monitor this medication, we monitor for side effects, but that this would help ease the concern of board intervention with this very new agent that is going to change the world. that this would ease things a lot.
You speak up.
Okay. I'll try to talk louder.
Yes.
Can I ask another question? Is the supply chain issue just because everybody's using it and using it up, or are they having trouble
It's
making it?
really interesting. It's been, I have to say, it's been interesting at best. First of all, when they produced Wegovy, which I think it was June, spring, summer of 2 years ago, that Wegovy was launched. And they did not anticipate the number of people that wanted it. There was a bridge card where people could get it for $25 a month for 6 months. And thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of people wanted it. So they ran out real quickly. Then they had a pen manufacturing problem. And so they stopped making the low doses. So only the people that had started it could get the higher doses of it. And so for about 1.5 years, it has been unavailable in the starting doses. So people have used Ozempic because they could get it. And TikTok and social media, anybody that's lost weight and posted their pictures, everybody wants to know what they did. They went to their family doctor. Some of them met the criteria, some probably didn't. I don't want to know. And that's what's happened. So diabetics that need Ozempic can't get it. I have a lot of patients that can't get their Ozempic, and they're, that's really controlled their blood sugar very well. They have the combination of diabetes and obesity, but now they can't get the medication that they need to control the blood sugar. I think it will help Mississippians if you really consider this. I think making the drug available, at least for now, until we know what the production issue is going to be. I think that's the real issue, is making it available to obese Mississippians and diabetic Mississippians.
Does the board have any other questions for Dr. Crawford? Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Dr. Crawford. Any further discussion on the topic itself? I'll entertain a motion to approve the proposed emergency rule change to Part 2640, Rule 1.5F. Is there a second? Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
Dr. Church.
We have 1 nay. Majority carries. Motion's approved. Thank you, Dr. Crawford. Moving on to item number 10, approval of consent order for Dr. Vincent L. Grant, Mississippi Medical License Number 16759.
Yes, Mr. President. Dr. Grant is not here appearing. He's practicing in Montana, and this is a mirror action, solely a mirror action, duplicating discipline that was applied by the Montana board. I'm summarizing the Montana documentation, but Dr. Grant got involved in a romantic relationship and was taken advantage of, and he prescribed some medications that he should not have, and he couldn't get out of the relationship. And so Montana had a full and complete investigation, and the terms of the proposed consent order that we're presenting mirror those. That is, that this would, Grant, his middle name is Lothario, I know, or Lothario, but Dr. Grant will be reprimanded. Item 2 would be that he has to comply with all the requirements of the Montana order, and including coursework. It is my understanding that that has already been done. And then item 3, Dr. Grant would be prohibited from engaging in a romantic or sexual relationship with a patient or former patient,
and to be forbidden from communicating with a patient using personal devices such as personal telephone, personal electronic mail address, and personal social media accounts. So obviously there were boundary issues with Dr. Grant. We all know that A was already forbidden as sexual misconduct. B, it appears that the Montana board thought that these guardrails would help Dr. Grant stay within the bounds of ethics and not have repeat losses. So again, this is purely mirroring the action taken by the Montana board where the event occurred and where it was fully investigated. We never addressed the board to approve the consent order.
Thank you, Paul. When I raise my voice, my wife says I'm screaming at her. So that's. All right, any further discussion on the consent order? I'll entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to item number 11. Dr. Irina Staiku, DO, Mississippi Medical License 28760, approval of consent order. Paul?
Yes, sir. And I believe that Dr., and I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce it, whether it's Staiku or Staiku, is appearing remotely. And I believe her attorney is also on the Zoom link. We apologize for the technical issues we're trying to work through. Obviously, we've got to change personnel and systems. We're trying doing the best we can to get those corrected, and we're also well aware of the audio problems. Dr. Clinton, we're working to correct those, get new and different types of mics. We've got professional sound and engineers coming in to help us fix that. We have a meeting next week to discuss changes. Dr. Staiku, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. And if her attorney would identify himself for the record.
Yeah, good morning. Jansen Voss here with Christian and Small Law Firm, representing Dr. Staiku.
This is possibly the first cannabis-related case that's come before the board. This case deals with the registration process for registering with the Department of Health to become a certifying practitioner. Dr. Staiku applied on the health system. Health reported to this board, made a complaint, and that they had investigated and that the physical address that Dr. Staiku had put on her application did not in fact exist. Our investigation confirmed that. This was a location where you can like rent conference rooms, you can rent office space or lease it. There are a few suite numbers. The suite number on the application did in fact physically did not exist. So when Health brought this to us, this was very early in the process, and the question was this intentional or was this a mistake? And what level of carelessness, what was needed to rectify the carelessness that Dr. Staiku had used in her application? I would say that when you sign up on the health system, a doctor has to attest that they have read the law and read the applicable regulations and that they understand them. And Dr. Staiku has admitted from the outset that her original intention was to do these certifications via telemedicine. And she only learned after she had submitted her application that in fact you can't do the certifications, at least initial certifications, by telemedicine. And after discussing this at length with Dr. Staiku and her attorney, we reached terms on a proposed consent order for a reprimand for Dr. Staku and for her to complete a CME course in medical ethics. Dr. Staku is here to answer any questions the board might have. We thought that this was an appropriate, it's an appropriate message. It made it clear that the registration rules and requirements were serious business. At the same time, it was not excessively costly. And again, we took this very seriously because this was the first complaint we received directly from health. And it is our understanding that the Department of Health agrees with the proposed consent order at the terms. So we would ask the board to approve Dr. Staku's consent order.
Paula, I presume if she had past actions on her license that you'd be telling us about it.
Yes, sir. And as far as I know, our investigation did not show any past actions, certainly not here in Mississippi, and I'm not aware of any anywhere. Is that right, Dr. Staku?
Correct. I have never had actions ever.
Dr. Lippincott.
Could you please just summarize the requirements of the consent order?
Yes, sir. On page 2, the paragraph beginning now, therefore, this would be a public reprimand. Then in paragraph 1, Dr. Staku would attend a continuing medical education course in the area of medical ethics. And actually, the specific course given by PBI is actually listed at the end of paragraph 3, that it would be medical ethics and professionalism, ME-15. The other requirements are standard. The licensee would obey all federal, state, and local laws. That the licensee would reimburse the board for all costs up to $10,000. We've already made that assessment, which is we're ahead of where we usually are, but so we could go ahead and put the $300 figure actually in this order. And that was important to Dr. Staku. And the other terms are just our standard requirements for board approval and the effect if the board does not approve.
Thanks, Paul. So what could you explain to me exactly what her violation was?
Yes, sir. She attested on her application that all the information was true and correct. And in fact, the location she gave for her practice address where she would be doing these certifications did not in fact physically exist.
She provided false information to the board.
So how did that happen?
Dr. Staku is, I believe, I mean, obviously Dr. Staku can answer this question better than me.
Thank you.
But the company that she worked for, I believe Dr. Staku has conveyed to us that she was given bad information. But again, Dr. Staku is here to answer that.
So let me ask you one more question. Did you say that the CME or the education requirement to certify medical cannabis is required to be attended in person?
No, sir. That most of these CMEs now are done online. It depends on the course. I believe Dr. Staku is probably planning to attend virtually.
Yes.
So what was there a violation that she didn't do something in person that she did virtually? I didn't understand that.
Oh, she was planning on doing cannabis certifications through telemedicine.
Oh, so the cannabis certification has to be in person.
Yes, sir. It requires a in-person physical exam.
Thank you.
And so the other issue, yes, a violation was certifying that she was familiar with the law and the rules, when in fact she was not, because she would have understood that if she had in fact studied the rules.
Thanks, Paul.
Dr. Staku, where is your practice and what do you do?
I'm a doctor of internal medicine and pain management. I currently work in Philadelphia.
Are you board certified in pain management?
I am.
And when you say Philadelphia, Philadelphia, Mississippi, or
I'm
Philadelphia?
sorry, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I apologize.
They are different.
Any further questions from the board for Dr. Staku or council or our council? Council for Dr. Staku, do you have any statements that you'd like to make?
I'd like to just address a couple points. First of all, Mr. Barnes has been very professional with us through the whole process. We certainly understand the seriousness around medical cannabis, and we understand this board's responsibility with respect to that, and of course, the Department of Health's responsibility as well. I want to make something very clear, and I hope that it has come out already, but Dr. Staku has not seen any patients in the state of Mississippi. She has not provided any medical care to any patient in Mississippi. She has certainly not seen any patients in connection with medical cannabis, and has not written or authorized in any way any medical cannabis in the state of Mississippi. She probably should have called me before she submitted her application, but so that I could help her with the process, but she didn't, and she certainly apologizes for the mistake. I do want to correct one minor thing that Mr. Barnes said. The address exists. She didn't just make this up out of whole cloth. The address existed. The suite number did not. The suite number was provided to her by her employer, and that is erroneous and incorrect. And she has admitted that and acknowledged that from almost day one. And for that, she does apologize, and we apologize for that mistake. But there is no intent here on Dr. Staku's part to defraud or harm the citizens of the state of Mississippi. We agree with the consent order, and we would appreciate the board approving it. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any further questions? Dr. Lippincott?
Dr. Staku, since the requirement is for in-person practice, are you still planning on certifying medical cannabis in Mississippi?
No, I am not.
So I'd like to ask, how did you come to apply for this did you have a Mississippi license before?
I did. And I work in several states where telemedicine is allowed for medical cannabis. So I applied hoping that I would be able to work there, but that wasn't the case.
Okay, so you did this on your own. You weren't recruited by a company or something.
Well, my company wanted to include Mississippi into their repertoire of states that they represented and that they worked in.
But they didn't know that in-person practice was required.
They did not. They told me that it was not.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? I'll entertain a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Moving on.
May we be excused from the hearing, board?
You are excused.
Have a great day.
Thank you, sir.
Moving on to item number 12, Charles E. Schlosser, MD, Mississippi Medical License 25865, approval of consent order. Paul?
Yes, Mr. President, First, I'd like Dr. Schlosser is here in person. I'd like to introduce Dr. Charles Schlosser. And this is his attorney, Tristan Armour from here in Mississippi. And I think to, just Armour, please, have a seat. And suppose if the board might have any questions for Dr. Schlosser, we should go ahead and have him sworn and let him sit at the witness stand just in case. That would be- Okay, so if we could have Dr. Schlosser sworn.
Sorry, David.
Come up here. I'm going to try not to dive down so far into the numerous dates that are involved in this situation to bog the board down. Effectively, this is essentially what happened. Dr. Schlosser was practicing primarily in Louisiana, and he had an opportunity to come work in Mississippi that arose. Dr. Schlosser had an audit performed by a third-party auditing company who was reviewing charts called Keypro, while he's practicing in Louisiana. And they sent him a pretty nasty letter saying, your charts are bad, we need to have a meeting. Well, as it turns out, that was because the complete charts had not been provided. And ultimately, that chart review issue was resolved in Dr. Schlosser's favor. At some point, the Louisiana board, that was in February of 2018. A couple months later, the Louisiana board sent a subpoena to Dr. Schlosser, and it was addressed to him, but it was sent to his office. It was signed for by his wife. His wife was his office manager. And the subpoena did not specify that there was an investigation. At that time, Dr. Schlosser had not been notified that he was being investigated by the Louisiana board. At that time, he had not been disciplined by the Louisiana board. And Dr. Schlosser, 2 days after that subpoena arrived, he filed his initial Mississippi application. He didn't disclose any information about the third party, the audit, the chart review, and he didn't reveal anything about a possible investigation by the Louisiana board. Maybe a year later, or over a year later, Dr. Schlosser was contacted by the Louisiana board. They followed up. He learned that he had been investigated and that they reached terms on a consent order, and that was entered. And Dr. Schlosser did report that on his subsequent reapplication. When we met with Dr. Schlosser, the bottom line for us was, and the charges were that Dr. Schlosser provided false information on his application and reapplication. But the primary factual issue was this intentional and knowing and an intent to deceive, or was this the result of carelessness or mistake? And Dr. Schlosser has assured us that it was the result of carelessness or mistake, and the evidence is equivocal on that point. And it certainly could be the product of carelessness or mistake. Dr. Schlosser now practices in Mississippi full time.
Yeah, I still do a little bit of Louisiana.
But you work a full schedule in Mississippi and you work some in Louisiana. Yes. And bottom line was that Dr. Cleveland and I, after we met with Dr. Schlosser, we found him to be credible. And therefore, we offered him a consent order, which is, I want to make this clear, the terms of this are first, that he comply with all the terms of the Louisiana order, which I believe he already has, but to confirm that each of those have been done in writing. That's term one. And in addition, for the, at a minimum, carelessness in completing information, that Dr. Schlosser should take a specific CME course, the PRO program, which the board members are familiar with. You know, that's fairly in-depth program requires a licensee, a professional to examine what they have done that has gotten them into the position that they are in and how they can avoid it in the future. So this is a mirror action with one added CME requirement, and we added that CME requirement because of the inaccuracies or incomplete information, or whatever words you want to use it, on the Mississippi application. So we would ask the board to approve the consent order.
Question to the board? Opposing counsel, do you have any statement?
No, I think the summary is adequate. And again, I mean, I'm going to take my word for it, but I met Dr. Schlosser, talked to him, looked through this entire factual litany when he told y'all about his discipline in Louisiana. The key fact is he told this board about his discipline in Louisiana long before he even got and signed a consent order. When it became clear to him, he reported it. You can go back hindsight and say, when this audit bunch was looking at you, reported you to Louisiana, but then fully cleared you, did you think you had discipline? And his answer was no, I got fully cleared. And that led to this cascade of, well, they started up again in Louisiana. So we said yes. They stopped in Louisiana. So we said no. And so careless, yes. When I was in law school, our third year law school, we were told quite explicitly, you apply to the bar. They may say, did you ever get a speeding ticket? Even if you were a juvenile and it was washed away, you tell them. Okay, you over disclose for the sake of safety and being upfront. Did he over disclose? No. Should he have? Yes. Y'all need to know these things. He understands that. He accepts that. That's why he's agreed to take yet an additional CLE class about the importance of documenting things and being clear on things. He has completed his discipline in Louisiana. This is a mirror action. But I think he accepts the fact that when he was applying to you guys, sure, he should have done a little bit more. I think he accepts that.
Dr. Schlosser, do you have any comments that you'd like to make to it?
Well, like I said, the audit was actually a quality assurance from Kipro. And in private practice, especially pain management, we get audits all the time for set injections, regular frequency, stimulators, medication management. So we get these things. I do medical legal work. So I get subpoenaed records all the time. And like I said, we went over it. I got cleared, when the third party group asked for the records, they asked for clinic records, any consults. They didn't ask for the complete chart, so basically when this letter came back that they sent to the medical board and they never sent the, resolution of it. But what happened is they didn't have the drug screens, consents for procedures, procedure notes, and prescription monitoring information. So basically when I got the letter, I called them and they said, well, you have to go to either respond via email, a letter, or you can come in person. Telemedicine, you can come in person. So when I talked to the medical director, he's like, it's better to come in person. That way, if they have questions, you can then respond. If you do it on paper and they don't agree with what you put on paper, there's no back and forth. So I went down there to Tampa, met with them. First I sent them all the records. Then I met with them, and basically, I was cleared of everything. Because basically they were saying, I was doing things without a consent, a pain contract. I wasn't running the prescription monitor program. So all these things, looked horrible. But then when I got the complete record, then they were like, oh, everything's here. So they sent out a letter, I think May 3rd, and that everything was resolved. And I'd been talking back and forth with Dr. Tumajan, because I was on faculty at the LSU pain department, and he was one of the fellows that came through our pain program, and he worked with me during his fellowship moonlighting, and we're trying to do some things together. And he would come to Louisiana. I'd send patients to Mississippi, and then I had text messages when he, it was like literally, you know, it's coincidence, the day after I received the subpoena from the record from the medical board, they offered me a full-time position at Gulfport Memorial. Dr. Ram was leaving, and then Dr. Phillips wound up leaving. And it just, you know, it was just coincidence. Nothing was meant to, like, oh God, I got a subpoena, I'm gonna, you know, run to Mississippi. I still live in Louisiana, still practice in Louisiana also. And like I said, as time went on, I did disclose things. Like I said, maybe I should have done it a little sooner, you know, quality audit. I didn't think that was like, you know, the way some of the questions are asked is licensing board. I didn't realize third party quality assurance necessarily, you know, was something that falls in that category. And the other issue that came up was in what was I forget the date, 2020. On my renewal application, I said I was going to sign a consent, but we didn't know what it was. Then the next year, I put on there no, that there was no action since the last time. So I reported it. And then the question said, have you had any action since the last renewal? And since I already reported it the year before, that year I put no, because there was nothing new since I reported it. And then in 2022, when we officially signed it, I then reported that I had officially signed it. So that was the discrepancy.
So you've obviously learned a lot already through this process of the importance of details. So I guess what do you think that you'll get out of the CME course if you want to take it?
Just you know, more about the when you should report, and like we're talking about, you know, fully disclosing it's better to disclose everything out there up front and then have talks about it, as opposed to, you know, just kind of not thinking it's important when, you know, like I said, I'm not an attorney. I never tried to be. So, you know, I know those words are there for a reason. And I've learned that, you know, like I said, I've taken 3 courses through the Louisiana process. So a lot of the stuff that we're talking about, you know, I took extensive courses coming through there. You know, kind of what it was.
I'd like to go into executive session.
So move that we close the meeting to consider whether or not to go into executive session.
Second.
Is there a second? Any further discussion on the motion? All in favor, say aye. Motion carries. Back in full board meeting, Dr. Lippincott, Secretary of the Board, will read the findings of the executive session.
The board's decision is to approve the consent order.
Thank you.
Chairman, do you mind if we excuse ourselves from meeting?
Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Moving on to item number 13. Dr. Jeffrey James Ickler.
And I believe and I've learned that it's pronounced Eichler.
Eichler.
This is a motion for continuance by me as complaint counsel. It's unopposed. And the basis of this is that we have reached an agreement with Dr. Eichler for a reprimand. It was for violations of Rule 1.5. Yeah. Decided to put on hold, and it's specifically in large extent related specifically to the drug in question. And Executive Director, Dr. Reed and I did not feel that it was fair to hold Dr. Eichler to a deal that he has made when the board was about to consider whether or not changes to that rule should be made. And so therefore, we asked to postpone any consideration of that consent order in light of the board's actions.
So the request is approval of a continuance or the approval of consent order?
Approval of the continuance. So we would probably need to renegotiate the terms of the consent.
Okay. Wait for Dr. Owens to come back. I'll entertain a motion to approve the recommendation of a continuance of the case of Dr. Jeffrey James Eichler. Those motions are second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries for approval of continuance for Dr. Eichler. Moving on to item number 14. Dr. William Warren Smith, approval of consent order.
And Dr. Smith is here. Dr. Smith, please come forward. And I'd ask that Dr. Smith be sworn in case the board has any questions for him. What's over here where we have to fly? You have to speak directly. Summarize, Dr. Smith was disciplined by the VA hospital in Oklahoma, where he was working because he had been extremely deficient in record keeping and charts. That was a problem that actually started at the VA facility here in Mississippi, and continued when he was transferred to Oklahoma. The physicians committee at the VA hospital investigated Dr. Smith. And before he was, before he was disciplined, Dr. Smith was told that actually he resigned before he was disciplined. Dr. Smith now, I believe, is working at worked at the state penitentiary for a while. Where are you working at, Dr. Smith?
Work for the Osage Nation.
Dr. Smith, I forgot to do this, but You are here representing yourself. You do not have an attorney. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
You understand that you have the right to an attorney. If you wish to postpone this until you have an attorney, you have that right.
Yes, sir, I'm aware.
And are you waiving that right?
I do waive that.
We can go forward with this here without an attorney.
Yes.
Dr. Smith, if you would, please explain in your own words or why you're here, what happened, and how you got here.
Now, as was noted earlier, I had difficulty. I failed to do charts in, I was working in Pensacola for the Veterans Administration there, where the headquarters is in Biloxi. Transferred to Oklahoma, and at that point, there was a report of my failure to do charts adequately. And so that was handled through Oklahoma and was ultimately decided that I could continue to practice there if I kept all of my charts up to date, which I did not do. And so during the investigation, my chart keeping, I finished all of my charts, but that wasn't the point. The point was that I failed again to continue to keep my records up to date. And so when I applied for reapplication for my license in Mississippi, I incorrectly placed a verb that I had no record, no investigation ongoing, which was not the case. So I sit here before you, my failure to be honest and to test to my sincere knowledge of the law and profession. Practicing psychiatrist over 35 years. I did not keep up with and have kept up with him since that time, but that's not what I'm saying here because I didn't keep up with him. Said that I did. And also told you before that I wasn't under investigation.
And the terms of the consent order would be a public reprimand for Dr. Smith and a CME area of medical record keeping. The only other comment that I have, or may have some questions for Dr. Smith, is that Dr. Smith has, I guess, the right phrase, complaint with the executive director and I enter the investigation. Dr. Smith has not denied his culpability. He has admitted his shortcomings and his failures. And that is why we're asking the board to consider the terms of this consent order. I would probably be remiss if I didn't remind the board that when you're presented with a consent order, you can either accept the consent order, reject the consent order, or offer a modified consent order on terms as the board sees fit.
Does the board have any questions of Dr. Smith? Dr. Lippincott?
Hi, Dr. Smith. I'm Ken Lippincott, a psychiatrist from Tupelo. And could you just explain to us what was the difficulty with keeping the records? I know that the VA has they've had an electronic health record for years. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, it is. It's an old fashioned, but it's not the records problem.
Could you explain what was the problem? Procrastination or what?
Yes, sir. Procrastination, exactly. So that's failure of confidence on my part to some degree, but also willfulness. And the fact was, I shouldn't say this, but I told the executive director that when he reinstated me to continue practice, and I told him that I keep up the records I do. Shows a lack of gratitude on my part as well as humility. That's that to you. Not doing the records is a matter of my own procrastination, which is my personal failing.
Was it primarily outpatients or in
All
all outpatients? Thank you.
Dr. Smith, where are you practicing now?
practice for Osage Nation. It's in Pawhuska, Oklahoma. It's under the, yes, under the federal government, the INS, the health service, the health services, but I practice outpatient psychiatry.
And what was, why did you go to Oklahoma?
Principally because I had a very difficult divorce, and I didn't particularly like Alabama, which is where I was living. I was practicing in Oklahoma and Mississippi. So I just, my daughter lives in Oklahoma. I just thought I would travel and move there, and as long as I got a job with the Oklahoma Veterans Administration, I'm a veteran, so I thought it would be something that I enjoy doing. I love taking care of veterans. It's just the Veterans Administration. I have my own problems with that. But I wanted to go there to since we started.
Dr.
Dr. Smith, Rod Gibbons, so you admitted your shortcomings, procrastination, and so forth. Have you done anything to address those shortcomings? Procrastinating, for whatever the reason. What I'm having is, how do we know we don't fall like that? Have we done anything to address the reason, or underlying reason for not using the
Yes, partly I've gotten a stable. And I don't have all of the distractions that I had. I was an alcoholic. I am an alcoholic, and in recovery disappointed during my fourth year of recovery, monitored by the Mississippi board, Mississippi, as well as the so that's also something that I'm working on. Program of recovery is about honesty. I have completed all of my records, both when I was working for the prison system. I would see 20 people a day in the prison system. But I did that. I completed that. And also for the Osage Nation, I get my records done that day. I don't procrastinate because I understand that my procrastination is part of the way that I self-serve. It's basically my own desire to actually be honest with myself. That's part of it. To make sure that I'm very interested in continuing the position, but also to continue to demonstrate that I can be. I think I'm a good psychiatrist, but I'm not a good record keeper, and that's part of the game, part of the. Should one and all that I can do, and.
Doctor, where do you hope to practice in the near future?
I still work at Old Singing River Hospital in Pascagoula, taking call one night a week, and sometimes one weekend a month. I take it which I worked there last Thanksgiving in person, but typically I do it all virtual. So I've maintained that relationship, and I've been working at Singing Rivers since 1996. So, I hope to continue that, and I hope to continue working for the Osage Nation.
Any other questions or concerns from the board?
Dr. Smith, are you aware of any clinical complications that resulted from your lack of record keeping?
No, sir. I haven't been informed of any, and God, I take good care of my patients. I just do a better job with the records. My patients think that's in any case, and also people that work with me. But I do not deny that my record keeping is a problem. I must constantly be mindful of and do the right thing. But no, I haven't.
Thank you.
Paul?
Yes, sir. Dr. Smith disclosed some confidential information in his testimony. In fact, that's that he is not represented by counsel. However, I want to assure the board that Dr. Smith has never offered that as an excuse. He's never said this problem is, has caused me to be a bad record keeper. And he is in full compliance with his obligations, programs he mentioned, to the best of our knowledge.
Yes, I told them when I didn't get an Oklahoma license till about a year and a half ago. So they were aware of my issue with record keeping when I applied. So yes. I did take that. Yes. I had. No, sir. Not sure where.
I'll call the vote. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent order for Dr. William Warren Smith.
Somebody,
Session.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. You approve your consent order, Dr. Smith.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Moving on to item number 15. This is a full hearing. Do you want to take a break?
Well, it's turned into a motion for continuance.
Oh, okay.
Motion for continuance.
Okay, I see.
I think we can handle this quickly, but
I see.
inform the board. The reason for my request is that this is going to be a long hearing. It's very likely going to need to be a special setting, at least a 2-day hearing. That's my understanding based on conversations and, with Dr. Headley's counsel. So the executive director and I, we were trying to work out the details with his counsel as to when we can have this hearing held. It is a complex matter, and it also involves a second licensing has some involvement. So it raises issues that are taking us a little bit more time to resolve. So we asked for a continuance.
motion for that.
There's a motion for a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. The continuance is approved.
Mr. President, however you'd like to handle this, it's obviously your choice. The next three items all need to be handled in executive session. So if you want to take a break now and then come back, or we could go ahead and you could go into executive session and take a break at the same time. But as we have done in previous meetings, we would need to do separate motion for each of these items, have a vote to go into executive session. But then once you physically go back into the conference room, you could handle all of those matters. Not have to physically come back into the so however you'd like to proceed.
Okay. We'll entertain a motion to go into executive session. We could probably figure out how to get a bathroom break. In
Move to
between-
close the
in between
meeting
them.
to consider whether to go into executive session.
We'll need to do that 3 times. So hang on, if I can, please say to the record. The purposes. The first purpose is for approval of an examining committee report for case number 2022-084. It's confidential information based on state statute, and therefore I would respectfully request the board go into executive session to consider approval of that report.
Are we gonna do these 3 separate ones? Okay.
We need to.
All right, so I'll amend my motion or withdraw it. To close the meeting to consider whether to go into executive session for the approval of the examining committee report.
Is there a second? Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
The second item is item number 17, which is request for approval of investigative subpoenas in 2 different cases. So with respect to the request, the board agree to go into executive session to consider issuing those subpoenas as required.
Entertain a motion to go into executive session for the investigative subpoena for case number
We're
20.
closing, yes,
Closing
so move to
to
close the
consider.
meeting to consider whether to go into executive session for consideration of the investigative subpoenas for the cases as listed 2023-047, 2022-091.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
The last agenda item, number 18. I didn't need to make a confidential report to the board on pending and prospective litigation. For the record, there are two pending pieces of litigation, and 1 piece of prospective litigation. that I'd like to discuss.
Close the meeting to consider to go into executive session to discuss the pending and prospective litigation, 3 items.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
That's all I have.
This is awkward. Executive session is now closed and we're back on a full hearing. Secretary of the Board, Dr. Lippincott, will read the findings of the executive session.
The board voted to approve the examining committee report for case 2022-084. And the board voted to improve the investigative subpoenas for case number 1922-091. And the investigative subpoenas for case number 2023-047.
Thank you. Moving on to other business, I believe Dr. Cleveland has something to present.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. At this point, I would like to request that the board rescind policy 3.23, medical information and disinformation policy. This policy has served its purpose in the past during the height of COVID. Make licensees aware of their responsibility to use professionalism for discussing medical issues with their patients or with the public. We've had very few complaints along these lines and no investigations have led to any discipline. So at this time, I want to ask the board.
I so move.
I'll second it.
There's a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, March meeting dates, 22nd, 23rd, any, we're gonna be able to make that meeting? Not make any changes. When, spring break's different for everybody.
Yeah, I think it's the,
Yeah.
I'll confirm it, but I think that's right. Yeah.
So it's not the 15th and 16th. I had that original calendar. So
15th, 16th is spring break. For all people.
Okay.
Including the executive director.
All right. Any other business of the board? We are adjourned.
It's March 22nd, 3rd, 23rd.